So far in our Ansible journey, we've automated some things such as installing and updating packages. And while that is certainly a great thing to automate, there's certainly a lot more to Linux administration than installing packages. In this video, we are going to take a break from installing packages, and we are going to look at the concept of copying a file to our server. We're going to create a file in our Git repository, and then we are going to use Ansible to grab that file and put it in a very particular place, so we could do things like customize a default website or maybe install a default configuration file. There's all kinds of use cases for this. So let's go ahead and check it out. So let's go ahead and do a quick check. We'll just do a Git Status, make sure we are fully synchronized, and we are. And then of course a Git pull to make sure no one else on our team has basically committed any changes since we last worked with the repository. And we should be good to go. So what we want to do right now is create a new directory. So I'll just do mkdir, I'll call it files, clever, I know. And now we have that directory among all the others here. Now notice if we do Git Status, that it's not even showing that we've made any changes at all. And that's because, well, we don't have anything in the files directory. It's an empty directory. By default, Git is not going to copy an empty directory or give you the opportunity to add it to version control. Long story, but just so you know. But what we can do is use Nano or whatever your text editor of choice is to create a file in that directory. And I'm going to call it default_site.html. You don't actually need to have an underscore instead of spaces. It's just a Linux admin thing. It's habit, but it makes things a lot easier when you're working with the command line because you don't have to take spaces into account. But anyway, I'll press enter. And let's go ahead and add some content. I'm going to create a very dumb HTML file. It's not going to be impressive at all, but we want to basically use this as an example of copying a file to our servers. So I'm going to give it a title. So basically the title of this website is website test. And then in the body, we'll add a small little paragraph here. Let's go ahead and close the body tag. And then the same, let's close HTML. And we have a basic HTML file. This is not a course on HTML or web design or anything like that. But this is a very, very basic example. We just simply have a title. That's what should show in the title bar of the browser, basically. We have the body section where we can include the body of the web page. And all I'm doing is just including a paragraph that says Ansible is awesome, which it is. Then I close everything out at the end. So I will save the file, then exit out. Now in our playbook, we need to go ahead and add a play to copy this file to the server. So let's open up the site file right here. And then let's go to the end of the web server section, which is about right here. We'll create a new play. And I'll give it some tags to keep in line with what we went over in the previous video. So the module that we are going to use is copy. And what copy allows us to do, as you can probably guess, is copy a file to the server. We need to give it a source, which is abbreviated. And the source is default_site.html. You know, basically the file that we created in the previous step. We also need to give it a destination, which is also abbreviated. And in our case, that will be /var/www html index.html, just like that. We will give it an owner. I'll just set that to root. And then group, I will also set to root. And then we'll give it a mode of 0644, which will set the permissions of that file. And Linux permissions are beyond the scope of this video, but I do have videos on my channel that goes over that if you want to learn more. But anyway, what we're doing here, again, is we are using the copy module. We have source, and the source is the file name that we want to copy over to the target server. Now, if you remember, I created a directory called files. And inside that directory, I placed this file. I created that new because that didn't exist before. Now, I'm not actually calling out files here. The directory name of files is assumed, so we only need to include the file name. And then we have the destination. The destination on the target server is going to be var www.html index.html. Recenter this here. And the file name here on this line does not need to be the same file name as the source, which can be helpful if somebody is wondering what the purpose is of this file. We called it default site because, well, it's the default site. But the destination is looking for an index.html file in this directory. That's the default web root of Apache. So that's the file name that we want it to become on the target. Having a different source file name and destination file name is also useful if the destination file is a hidden file. We may not want that file to be a hidden file in our repository, and if you didn't already know, files that begin with a period are hidden in Unix and Linux. That just makes it easier for us because we don't have those files hidden in our version-controlled repository, but maybe the destination file is actually hidden, so we need to include the period there. So there's all kinds of useful things that we can do with this in the naming, but essentially we need a source, which is going to be in our files directory, and then we need a destination where that will be copied to. The owner and the group I'm setting to root. Now when it comes to web servers, it is very common to set the owner and the group of that file to something like www users or something like that, whatever the Apache user happens to be. But that doesn't matter in this case because it's just a static HTML file. And setting the owner and the group to root is good for security purposes as well, because that means that nobody will be able to change this file unless they have access to the root account. And again, we have the permissions here, what we want the permissions to be of the file once it does get to that server. So let's go ahead and save this file, and we'll exit out. And to run this, we will use this command right here, just like we always have. I left out tags because I want everything to run so you can see the difference. I'll press enter. And let's see what happens. Now here we can see that two servers actually did get changes. We can see that right down here. So if we scroll up, now we can see that this play right here resulted in two changes. These are the web servers. So that means that this file should exist on both of those. So let's go over here to server number 3, and we'll see if that file exists. And there it is. We can see that this index.html file is exactly as we wrote it in the repository. And then here on CentOS, we have the exact same thing. So we can see that that was indeed a success. And if I go down here to the browser, we can see the default website for CentOS. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. And we get the text, Ansible is awesome. Now, if I enter the IP address for the other server, the Ubuntu server, we get the exact same thing because Ansible copied that index file to both of these servers. Now, I want to go ahead and show you another way that we could do some file management on our target servers. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take a moment and make sure that we are fully synchronized with GitHub. So Git Status, just to see what we've changed since we last made a commit. And right here we have the site.yml file, as we would expect. And then when we check the diff on this file, we can see that we have the new section here that we've added. So I will do git add, and then that file, and then git commit, and then the message will be added a play to copy the default site file for web servers, just like that. And now we still have one more change. Now notice before, the files directory did not show as a change when we ran Git Status, but now that we actually have a file inside that directory, it does show that, but notice it's not actually showing the default site file right here. Now that this folder here actually does contain a file, the folder in general is new, so it's actually calling out the fact that files is new. So we're going to go ahead and add that. So Git Add Files, and then when we check the status, we have the one commit that we just set up, and now we have this file right here that is going to be added to the next commit. Let's go ahead and take care of that. And there we go. Now at this point we have two commits that are staged locally, so let's go ahead and move on. So what I'm going to do is open up the playbook yet again, and I'm going to add another section here, and I'm also going to show you a new module at the same time. So I'm going to add hosts, workstations, which is brand new. I'll get to that in a moment. Become true tasks. And then the first of the new tasks, we will give it a name of install Unzip. I'll use the package module because that is going to be the same name regardless. Name is Unzip. That's the name of the package we want to install. And then I will add another play right here. And I will call this install Terraform. And the module I'm going to use is onArchive, which actually requires the Unzip package, which is why we are installing that in a previous step. And the source, I will give it a URL, and don't worry, I will fully explain everything I'm doing as soon as I finish typing it. So that was quite a long URL there. And the destination will be this right here, user local bin. So let me go ahead and explain what I'm actually doing here. So first of all, I am adding a new section, and this is going to be targeted towards workstations. I haven't actually added a workstation to the inventory list just yet, but right now I'm just setting up the plays that need to be executed towards that group. Again, become true, we'll use sudo, that's essentially what that does. Then we want to execute some tasks, and what we're going to run first is this play right here to install Unzip. And the Unzip package basically allows you to unzip zip files from the command line, so we're essentially just going to install that package. The next play is a lot more interesting though, because we already know how to install packages, so that was nothing new, but this one is definitely new. And I'll go ahead and center this a bit here. So the name of this play I set to install Terraform. Terraform is just arbitrary, it's just a fun example. I'm not actually going to go over Terraform in this video. I have videos about Terraform already. It's just a very cool utility. If you are at all getting into cloud management or cloud hosting, any of those types of things, or want to look at automation outside of Ansible, Terraform is awesome. Now, basically, the source is set to this URL right here. How did I know what URL to use? Well, basically, what I did off camera is I just Googled Terraform download. And here I just want to make sure that terraform.io is the domain, so I know that I'm going to the right site here. But anyway, I'll click on this and then scroll down a bit. And almost all Linux distributions are 64-bit nowadays. And when I hover over this link right here, you can kind of see on the bottom left corner the URL. The text might be a bit small. And I just basically right-clicked this and copied the link address. That's how I know what it actually is. And then up here, you could basically paste that into the source. So what's going to happen here is the onArchive module is going to essentially allow us to unzip a zip file or a compressed file. In this case, Terraform is downloaded from HashiCorp.com. We want to grab it from there. and we want to go ahead and grab this zip file right here from that site. The destination we set to user local bin. User local bin is a very common directory on a Linux system where binaries are stored, so we are essentially making the Terraform utility available from that directory. We didn't actually give it a file name because we don't actually have to give it a file name. We could call this binary potato if we wanted to, but that would be kind of silly. The Terraform zip file actually only includes one file, which is, well, Terraform. So that means Terraform will be available inside the user local bin directory. So if I minimize this real quick, I'll just do Control-Z to go back to the command line. And then let's take a look at that directory. There's nothing in there right now. So that's what's going to happen. It's going to download Terraform from this URL and then store it in this directory. Now this option here, remote source, we are letting Ansible know, don't even bother looking in the files directory for this. You won't find it there. This is a remote source. Now personally, I would have thought that HTTPS being the beginning of the source would have been enough to tell it that. And maybe they'll fix this in a future version, but we do have to actually call out the fact that this is something that is downloaded from the internet, which is what remote source does. Mode, we will set the permissions of the file that is extracted from the zip file, and then we simply set the owner as root and the group as root as well. So I'll save the file. So now that we have all the required plays in the site.yml file in our playbook, we haven't actually added the workstation to our inventory list yet. So let's go ahead and take care of that right now. So we'll edit the inventory. And then we could go ahead and create a section for workstations. And then we can go ahead and add the IP address of our, well, workstation. And in my case, that is 172.168.250.135. So now that we have that, I will go ahead and save this file. Now next we will need to add the Ansible key to that workstation. So we will use the SSH copy ID command, and we will use that against this IP address. I'll say yes to accept the connection, type the password, and we should be good to go. Now you might be wondering why I'm including a workstation section here. So real quick, before we run it, let's take another look at the file. And the takeaway here is that not only can we copy files to servers, we can use Ansible to provision our local workstation as well. And that could be very useful because in this case, we are making sure that we have Terraform installed on our workstation, or at least that's what we will be doing. Now it's very common for people that work in Linux administration to want their local computer to be set up in a very specific way. So it might make sense to have a section for workstations and have it automate the provisioning of your own computer. In this case, Terraform is just one example of a utility that we might want on our local workstation. But generally speaking, maybe you have your bash config file, your vim config file, or maybe you just want to provision your own user account. There's so many different things that you can actually do. And again, this is just one example of that. So let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. Now we can see right here that install updates is taking a very long time. And the reason why is because, well, the workstation, the machine that I'm actually connected to right now, you can see the title down there in the tmux bar, that has never had this run against it yet. So it does have a little bit of catching up to do before it's up to date with the others. So we can see that the updates have been installed. And it says changed for installing Terraform. So far so good. And then here we can see that the workstation, the machine with this IP address right here, has had two things changed, just like we expected. So we could do which and then Terraform, and see that it actually does recognize Terraform as a command. And if I run it, we get this default help page right here, which shows us that Terraform is actually working. And we have Ansible to thank for copying this over. That was awesome. So in this video, I showed you two ways that we can basically do some file management on our servers. I showed you how we can copy a file to our servers, and I also showed you a way that we can download a zip file from the internet and extract it locally. And there's more file management tricks that we can do in Ansible than just this, but I figured that these would be 2 fun examples to get you started. So I will have the next video on my channel uploaded very soon, so definitely stay tuned, and as soon as I have that edited and uploaded, I will see you there.